The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our December Learning Webinar. We're so excited today to be doing social media and public participation with Susanna Haas-Lyons. We apologize for a couple of minutes delay, but hey, it wouldn't be a technology webinar if we didn't have a few problems. So thank you so very much for your patience. So I'm just going to hand it over to Drew for a couple of minutes while he runs through the housekeeping, and then I'll take it back over to introduce Susanna. Drew, over to you, please.
Unmuted.
So we've got, this is, as always, an interactive session, and Susanna sent out a form there, so for those of you who filled out her survey form, thank you very much, and she'll be referring to that. But also, there's going to be opportunity for you to ask questions and make comments throughout this, and there's a few ways you can do that. There is the question box. You can just type it in as a chat, and at the appropriate time, Amelia can break in and ask the question for you. We also have the ability to mute and unmute your microphones. And in fact, we're going to mute everybody right now. So if you've got local control on your mic, please leave your mics unmuted, and we'll take care of muting them and unmuting them. You'll find a little yellow hand icon on your control panel that you see on your screen there. Click that, and that will show on our list of attendees you've got your hand up and you want to ask a question or make a comment, and we'll then open up your mic and you can do it. We also have polls, and Susanna's going to be asking some polls. They're kind of polls, kind of conversation starters, but that too is an opportunity for you to take part in this as well. This is being recorded, so if you have any If you want to go back and look at some of the material that Susanna's got, you want to go back over the recording and hear this again for your professional development, we'll have that out to you in about 24 hours after this session is finished. And we'll also send out a survey afterwards, just a little follow-up there. We'd appreciate if you'd fill that out, and we can keep on improving these webinars. And so with that, Amelia, I will toss it back to you.
Thanks very much, Drew. We really appreciate that. So again, a very warm welcome on behalf of IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA and IAP2 Australasia. It's a real pleasure to be able to do these worldwide webinars. So I'm going to be introducing Susanna, and while I do that, Drew's going to hand over the screen to Susanna so that we can get going. So Susanna Haas-Lyons, Master's in Arts, is an engagement specialist. She designs apparently I can't speak this morning, participation strategies, facilitates complex meetings, and provides training for better conversations between the public and decision makers. Bridging online and face-to-face methods, she has worked for over 15 years on some of North America's largest and most complex citizen and stakeholder engagement projects. Susanna teaches engagement skills for government, business, nonprofits, and at post-secondary institutions. Susanna is also a judge for IAP2 Canada's annual Core Values Awards, which recognize excellence and innovation in public participation. We should also point out that Susanna will be teaching a course in digital engagement at the upcoming IAP2 USA Skills Symposium in San Diego, February 27th through March 3rd, and you can certainly get more information on that on the IAP2 USA website. So without further ado, Susanna, we're looking forward to turning this over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Amelia, and thanks to everybody who's joining us. What a neat opportunity to get to have this conversation across so many borders and in different jurisdictions. I hope that we'll have a chance to talk with one another, as well as for me to get a chance to share some of the ways I think about digital engagement. So Amelia talked a little bit about the work I do. You can see here on the screen that a lot of the work that I come from focuses on large scale. So the top right-hand corner is the British Columbia Citizens Assembly on Electoral Reform. And then I worked with America Speaks for a number of years in the States. And then below is just a recent initiative I did with the City of Vancouver, where I'm based in Canada. And I want to say that I come with a fairly deep orientation to engaging citizens for decision making. And I want to acknowledge that there may be a variety of reasons in which the people on this webinar engage citizens. You might engage citizens for conflict transformation, for community action, for just deeper understanding through dialogue. And so I will do my best to try to manage my own tendency to continue to focus on decision making, but if that's not your context, do me a favor and please do some translation for me.
So,
I've been using,
Susanna, just before you get started, we may be seeing a slightly different screen than you because we're actually seeing not your full PowerPoint, and we're seeing, I think, your front page, digital engagement and public participation. So we might just want to, if you could go into a presentation mode, and we'll just make sure.
I'm in presentation mode, so I just changed it to the PowerPoint slide.
Excellent. Now
Great,
we can see multiple pictures. Thank you so much. Okay, cheers.
Great. And Amelia, just jump in at any point if the images haven't loaded yet, and anything you think I need to know to help make sure that people are having a good experience. Let me know, please.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, and Drew, in a moment I'm going to do the first poll. So I just had a chance to talk a little bit about myself. I was going to say in addition that I also have been using digital tools for organizing public involvement and participation opportunities probably since 2006 in an ongoing way, which I think coincided with the beginning of more and more user-friendly tools that people who are not necessarily deeply technical could create opportunities for the public to come online and get connected to information and get connected to other people who care about issues they care about. And it's a constantly evolving field. Amelia mentioned that I'll be doing a course about this, a 2-day course in San Diego in the new year. And pretty much every time I teach a course about social media and engagement, I have to rewrite it because it's changed so much. We did actually a webinar on the same topic 3 years ago, and people's capacities for understanding the technology have leapfrogged, plus our available tools have leapfrogged. So while our abilities are getting, we're all getting more comfortable with the technology, our options are proliferating, it is still very much a field in which we are learning and experimenting and failing and trying to grow. So if you have been involved in digital engagement and you're like, why is it complicated and why hasn't it totally worked yet? It's because we're all still figuring it out, how to make good dialogue occur, good deliberation occur in these online contexts. And there's certainly some very interesting trends and lessons to build on, but I just want to acknowledge that this is not here are the answers kind of webinar, but here are some things to think about kind of webinar. So let's find out who's on the line here in terms of the kind of work you do and what sector you're from. And should I turn it over to you, Drew or Amelia? Would you like me to run the poll?
Nope, that's okay. We've got the poll up and running. And the question is, what sector do you work in? Private, government, or independent practitioner? Should just take a couple of seconds for people to let us know. And we're going to shut the poll down in 1-2 seconds. Drew, what have we got? So, Susanna, joining us today are 31% from the private sector, 49% from government, and 20% are independent practitioners.
Great. And I recognize we don't have an other option there, so I do apologize if that you would have fallen into another category. But I think it's just useful for us to understand the various places we're coming at it from. So now let's see. I have.
Why is it not going?
Now are we still? And Amelia, do you now see the digital engagement screen?
Well, we're going to just check and make sure that it's your screen running, running, Susanna. So just a second. Drew's just going to make sure.
No,
there we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Good stuff.
Thank you. So, I was recognizing that digital engagement has a lot of different meanings. So you folks in the U.S. may know Tim Bonneman. He runs a company called Intellex, and he's currently developed an online dialogue and deliberation tool called Zelinio. And I thought his description was quite nice in terms of that digital engagement is information and communications technologies to support, enhance, or extend public participation and civic engagement processes. And underneath that lies a variety of tools. This is stuff you go to on your computer or your tablet, or it's just that happens through text messaging, or it's possibly even online voting and those kinds of elements. So it's a real mix of stuff, and I prefer to use digital engagement because it doesn't constrain us to thinking only about stuff that happens online or on our mobile phones. Now, social media, and I just want to get two terms clear before we dive into the content. Those are websites, they're applications, and what they do is they enable users to create and share content, which is a new thing for the web. Before social media, the people who created content was a much smaller group of people, and then also to participate in social networking, to find one another for common interests or identities. And these tools make it easier for people to share their views with large groups of people, to give input into decision making, find like-minded people to work with on change, and to raise attention and money. So with those kinds of terms laid down, there's two foundational concepts I want to bring up before we get too far into the conversation. So the first thing is that good quality engagement follows the same principles whether we're online or offline. What I'd like you to do now is to open your chat box and to select, let's see, is there a way for people to talk to everybody or no? Can everybody see each other's chats, or there's no option for that?
Sorry, Susanna, there's no option on the webinar, just on the GoToMeeting.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So let's, if you wouldn't mind, to put into the question box what you think are some of the essential qualities of good engagement, whether you're thinking about online or offline. And then Amelia, as some of them come in, maybe you could just read a few off to us. So open up the questions panel and type a question in,
getting lots of responses here. So I'm going to start saying them. Authentic, inclusive, intentional, designed, civil, accessible, a lot of accessibility, having clear objectives, transparent. It needs to be an open process. We need to be recruiting a diverse representative stakeholders. We need to be responsive. Good engagement is about trust. It needs to be relevant and timely information. People actually need to care. It needs to be purposeful. There needs to be safety and respect for all participants. We need to be able to involve the people who will be affected, and we need to ask compelling questions. Accountability, nonpartisan, simplicity and authenticity. We need to make sure that we will use the information. We need to engage early. We need to reduce and eliminate barriers to participation. We need to follow up and clear messages from the outset and set the tone for the conversation. Know what you are asking the public to participate and be transparent with that. We need to be ethical. Multiple means and mediums to allow for input, and we need to allow participants to let us know where they're at.
Great. That's a wonderful list. Please continue to send them in if you've got them, and maybe we can include those in the notes for the webinar. So wonderful to be having a conversation with people who understand public engagement in such a deeply responsive way to the needs of the people who are engaging. So just briefly, what we heard is around good quality engagement is about engaging the people most affected by the issue in a representative group of way, and that how we engage is as important as what we engage on, and ensuring that we're engaging people in a meaningful context, that what they're going to share is objective, focused, and will be considered in an ongoing way. And of course so nobody explicitly said this, but to do that we are able to report back. And I think that all of those elements, that we have to really stay focused on that, because it's easy to get run away with, we have to get on Facebook, but why? And so wonderful. The second foundational piece that I want to share is around we can't just be using digital. Digital engagement enhances the techniques you already use to engage your communities. It's not a replacement. And sometimes, I mean, of course, this is not a rule. Sometimes it is a replacement because you're engaging a highly distributed population in terms of geography, or you're engaging people who have deep mobility issues and are unlikely to come to a meeting. But most of the time, what digital allows us to do is to address the barriers to engagement for attending in-person events, and to create opportunities for people who are unable or unwilling to come to an open house or come to an in-person workshop, or to even be at the grocery store while you're standing there with some information and a shallow or thin opportunity to participate. And I think that, so underneath here is that piece around the digital divide and people saying, well, if we do online, we're leaving people behind. Let us remember that when we do face-to-face, we're also leaving people behind. So it is not a panacea, but instead a powerful way to ensure robust participation from a diverse group of people. So I think well, I brought up this slide here just to kind of give some focus on the digital divide, but essentially what I'm saying is what I had said earlier around that the digital divide is a gap between people with effective access and those with poor access. The major variables we've uncovered is that it comes down to income and education. But access through mobile devices is changing the landscape. And so really what we're talking about when we talk about the digital divide today is a second level digital divide, which is the production gap, the production of information. Who is making the content that all of us are consuming when we go onto the internet and social media? Is it young, white, rich men? Because, for example, Wikipedia shows that the majority of editors fall into that category, and we may find that consistent in other sites as well. And then how do we change that? How do we provide increased capacity? And then the second piece is the civic involvement gap, that those who are using online technologies but not participating in the civic engagement world that we here in the P2 world are concerned about. And My Society has a wonderful paper called Novel Approaches to Citizen Engagement, published last year, and they suggest a couple things that I'm pulling out here, which is to offer digital education in the community with an emphasis on underrepresented groups, especially for those of you that half of the group here are involved in government, to start to build capacity with the communities with whom you're working over time. And also to ensure diversity and inclusion in the design, development, and testing of these engagement approaches. So here are 5 steps that I think are useful to consider for effective digital public participation. But actually, before I do that, Drew, I'd like to do the second poll here. And I'd like to know, how well equipped is your organization for engaging participants with digital tools? And here's 4 options. They're slightly bit tongue-in-cheek, but you get the idea. So we use carrier pigeons to let people know about the P2 opportunity. We have a website, yay! We use a few digital engagement tools. Maybe we also have a social media account, and once we tried an online budgeting tool. And then lastly, we have more social media accounts than cars in our parking lot. All right, Amelia, over to you.
I always like a sense of humor. Thank you so much for that. So while everyone gets going on letting us know, and we're going to close it in just a couple of seconds. All right, Drew, back to you, please. All right. Well, apparently 2% of our audience continue to use carrier pigeons. So that's good news. There we go. 16% we have a website. 74% we use a few digital engagement tools, and 7% apparently they've got more than cars in their parking lot, so I guess we need to talk about their parking lot size. But anyway, back to you, Susanna.
Thank you so much, Amelia. And Drew, I'll just wait for you to pass the presenter over to me again. And so I think that actually that's a very reflective distribution of where our organizations are, that many of us are trying stuff out a few of us are really, really good at it, and I know that there's actually a couple of technology providers attending today, and so some of that 7% might fall into that category. And a few of us are working in organizations that either just don't have the capacity or are unable to have some support in which to do this work. So there's a variety of barriers. So now that we know a little bit about kind of that there's a diversity in terms of how we're approaching it, here are 5 steps to consider for effective digital public participation. And here's a sort of a funny cartoon. What's the big campaign idea? We're going digital. We're going to Facebook, YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. What are we going to do in all those channels? I don't know. We'll figure it out later. So that's what we don't want to do, obviously. What we do want to do is have very objective focused engagement, and we heard this in your comments early as we were starting. So here's a variety of objectives you might have, and for example, in my early on in a decision-making process, these may be my objectives: to connect with new people, to listen to them, to disseminate information and build relationships. Then later on, I might move to agenda setting and issue framing in the top right-hand corner. So I think that this is kind of a useful rubric. I encourage you to personalize this and come up with your own as a list, but I think it's helpful to kind of have a menu of, all right, what are we up to when we're doing digital? And once you've identified your objectives, it becomes the foundation of your entire engagement strategy. Why you engage, who you engage, what you do, how you do it, what you measure, and it, of course, has to be connected to the organization or project's overall objectives. And each social media channel may have its own version of the objectives because the audience is different and because the type of activities that are possible in that channel are different. And like all good engagement, there should be iterations, that it may change over time depending on where you're at in your decision-making arc of the engagement issue, or about what you're finding works. And that's where measurement comes in such a powerful way. Number 2, identify specific participants and build relationship with those communities. And this is a really critical piece for all kinds of engagement. This is a really a great image of in Estonia. There are 14,000 people on stage singing in a choir and 100,000 people that are listening to the singing happening. And there is such a strong culture of connection with the opportunity that we see here in this image, that's what we're trying to motivate as well, is to be able to, who am I talking to, where do they spend time, and how do I have a mutual exchange of value, that they are participating in a way that feels meaningful, and we are also having our objectives met. Number 3, decide up front how much time, resources, and effort you can invest. Is it going to be cheap? Is it going to be fast? Or is it going to be good? Is it going to be a mix of those things? And you know, right in the middle of that Venn diagram, it's hard to do all 3. And so maybe you're going to do something that is good and inexpensive, so it's going to take some time. Or it's going to be fast and inexpensive, so it'll have to be fairly like moderate quality. You know, you're obviously not going to purposely do low quality, but it'll have to be a really scaled back initiative. And then once you've done those things, what's your objectives, who are you talking to, what's your context and resources, then you select the appropriate channel for your engagement opportunity and audience. Really critical. If we walk in and we say we need to do, you know, participatory budgeting online, or a budgeting tool online, or we need to do idea generation, but it doesn't quite fit with all those previous questions, we have to let it go. We can't be searching after that shiny tool. Then lastly, it's about tracking progress and adjusting your strategy as you go, because we need to know, are the people we're hoping to engage, are those people getting involved? Are we getting the kind of feedback and input that we were hoping to get? Is this costing us, are we being able to, the amount of staff time and resources that are required, or the monetary input, is that sufficient or appropriate for the kind of project we're doing? All those are the questions that need to be tracked over time, because you don't want to turn around at the end of the project and start asking them. Instead, adjust in real time. So I know that many people are interested in what are the tools that are out there. And there are so many tools out there. And I have 4 sites that I'm going to provide links to, and we'll send it out again in the notes as well, which are places that you can go to explore. And some of them are just lists, and some of them are actually searchable, but mostly I thought what might be useful for us as people who are doing P2 is to get a sense of, okay, what kinds of tools are there? So the first category of tools are tools that listen and inform, listen and or inform. And of course, this is the beginning of the IAP2 spectrum, which is the informing piece, but of course we can't inform without knowing who we're talking to and what's important to them and what issues are there. So I think these are complementary pieces. So here's a couple examples. Here's a tool called Hootsuite for listening. It's free, it's online. If you haven't yet checked out social media monitoring, which means listening to what people are saying online about you, this is a great place to start. Go to Hootsuite, Hootsuite, and connect your social media accounts and follow some hashtags, follow some lists. If you're unsure about how to do those things, Hootsuite may have tips for you, or maybe a colleague in the office does, or even just search online. And you can see here what I'm doing here in terms of listening is I've chosen 3 words, 3 hashtags that describe, that follow conversations about our field of public engagement. And a hashtag, if you are not familiar with the term, is an organizing term, an organizing tool to help say this post is about this topic, and that way we can tune in to specific conversations. So demo part is democratic participation, and this is a nice one for international because they use it in Europe, civic engagement, and public participation. There's a bunch of other ones. And actually, if you have hashtags around our field that you like to follow, if you want to put that in the questions box, and I'll pause before I move on to the next category of engagement, and Amelia, you can read those out to us. Here's another way of listening, and you might say this is also kind of shallow engagement or getting initial feedback, but in some ways this is a listening tool as well, where you're asking people, is Buffalo Niagara moving in the right direction? You know, what are you thinking before I start telling you what I want to engage on? What do you think? And this is a tool using an online or a texting tool called Mobile Commons, and they worked with Buffalo Niagara, One Region for its regional plan for sustainable development. And then wonderful opportunity, people, oh, fun, easy question, I'm standing at the bus stop anyway, and then people have one of the questions they would get would be an opt-in to get follow-up questions. You'll see step 3 is you'll get 3 to 5 follow-up questions, and then we'll send some in the following months, so that you're able to connect people where they're at, low barrier for engagement, and then hopefully getting them involved more over time. So I'm going to talk about better surveys, but first, Amelia, did anybody put in any hashtags that they thought were valuable for others to know about?
Well, unfortunately not. We haven't seen any hashtags yet, but I'll encourage our participants to send us hashtags once again, and as soon as I get them, I'll let you know.
Okay,
Thanks,
that sounds
Susanna.
great. Yeah. So that was the first category of tools, listening and informing. Oh, and you know, I should say that I didn't have a picture there of other ways we inform. I could have easily had, you know, a booth at a park or at a fair or a website or a variety of different things. I kind of thought everybody's got that one under their belt, so I didn't need to have an image of it. But of course, informing is critical, and it's great to do it in fun and interactive and accessible ways. And I guess actually before I move on totally, I'll say one of the trends I've seen in online engagement, and you may have seen this as well, is having short videos that accompany, as soon as you land on the website, what are we doing, what are we up to here, who's listening to your input, to make it very easy for your message about what we're up to work. And then also using those kinds of videos as you go to give people information that before they fill out a survey or interact with other online engagement opportunities. And then the second trend that I think is quite useful is having very high-level, one-paragraph amount of information so people can read it, and then include links for more information for people who want to get it, but to not assume that we need to give people all the information up front. I think those are 2 useful trends to consider when you're thinking about how to involve people. And then the third one I'm thinking about just as I'm talking is out of Canada, the Hill and Knowlton, previously Ascentum choice book, is a interesting approach of providing a couple screens of information and then a question and then more information and then a question and staggering it as you go. If you're interested in checking that one out, currently they have a live consultation with the Government of Canada on the Environmental Assessment Act, and if you look up the Environmental Assessment Review, you'll be able to find the online choice book. Of course, it's a live consultation, so if you do check it out, please respond in a way that is respectful of their goals of getting input, and even take a minute if you're in Canada to provide some input on the issue. Okay, second category of tools I want to identify here is better surveys, and you can see here this is a a basic paper survey, and I think this is one of the places where many of us have had an experience that we use SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics or some other kind of tool, and the survey tools have gotten much better in providing some kind of fun aspect where you can drag and drop to order rank your preferences, or you can add numbers to allocate up to 10 so that you can see what the weighting would be, or even provide some images as you go. And then the more developed tools will allow you actually to interact with some of the images, so you can get heat maps of where people might feedback on an image, or to go through a story, or to have those kinds of more fun graphical interface kinds of pieces so that people don't feel like they're bored slogging through a survey. So those are some of the things you might think of for how to improve survey. One of the participants on the call, and I unfortunately I'm not able to toggle through my screens that well, or I don't want to, so I don't want to mess anything up, but somebody here, and if it was you, just type into the question, so I can name you if you want to be named, who worked in Raleigh to get some input on the bicycle plan. And so here, this is a great example of a better survey, quote unquote. So a little bit of what we're doing and how your input will make a difference. Your response will help build a better understanding of community needs and priorities. Very clear. We're not doing what you're telling us, but we're going to understand what's happening here in the community, and it's kind of really sort of an inventory type of survey, and then who should participate and where to get more information. And here's an example of one of the aspects of the survey that you could see here, how other people were voting. I assume the polls are closed, so I assume that you couldn't see the responses until you clicked on which answer you wanted, and then you could see how other people responded. So there's a little bit of understanding the community, and then other comments, that your comments and maybe other people's comments. So the strength here is that it's not with the survey, it's often an individual experience, and I walk away still feeling like everybody feels the way I do. Having some kind of social element to it where I can see other people's responses, first of all, gives me a sense of, oh wow, there's a lot of people talking about it, and might give me a reflection of the diversity of opinion in my community. The drawback of this one set up here is that each comment is sort of a serial comment. There's no conversation happening, and that, first of all, is not as interesting, I think, for the participants, and also makes it a little bit more harder for the analysis, because you've got just tons of individual comments, and it's not a challenging task, but it doesn't give you a sense of where there was energy in the community about specific issues. Another survey that's happening right now is in
Susanna, just before you switch, Brad Johnson's on the line, and he is with Citizen, which is CITYZEN. They designed that particular survey for Raleigh. So he just wanted to say hi and thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Yes, yeah, and a great name for a tool as well. And so a neat tool, and there's tons of tools out there for interactive, interesting surveys. I think that was a good example. Here's an example here in Canada by PopVox, P-O-P-V-O-X, and if you've been following Canadian politics, there is a bit of an uproar going on currently about this survey. The Government of Canada is exploring electoral reform, and they approached the survey from a values-based perspective, where they're asking people questions like this. Is it better for several parties to have to govern together than for one party to make all the decisions in government? even if it takes longer for government to get things done. And I think that that clause, the second part of the sentence, is what's part of what's iring people, that they're, excuse me, it's not to seem to be fully independent, that there is an agenda that's being pushed, even if that is true, that it does take things longer, people are feeling like it's leading them. So that's, of course, something to be careful when we design surveys. There's a number of other things that people have been concerned about here, including a typical survey technique of asking the same question in a variety of ways, and they're trying to get statistically representative input, or scientifically accurate input, but people feel like they're not asking the questions that people want to answer, which is, what electoral reform opportunities are you interested in? So while the technology is fairly simple, you choose and you move on to the next one, people are angry because the content is not reflective of what they want. And I think that reminds us to always go out and test our materials with people we hope will be answering the questions. And I say, it's as easy as like walking down the hall with an iPad in your hand to a colleague that's not involved in the project, or actually walking downstairs to the coffee shop on the street near your building and putting the iPad in front of somebody and saying, I'm working on this thing, would you give me some input on how it's working? Just even doing that 3 to 5 times with other people outside of your small project world will give you enormously useful insight. And if they had done this, I think they would have been much less likely to be in the public anger. And in fact, there's so much public anger that the National Post, which is a national paper in Canada, has created a mock survey called Democracy Mine. And you can see in the middle of the page below the logo that kind of mimics the official survey, it says, "Tell us what we want to hear." And Democracy Mine is an innovative and new way to join the national conversation on electoral reform, so they're doing a parody. We understand that representative democracy is complicated, scary, and requires critical thought, so here's a simple web program you can use to draw a picture of your democratic values. Anyway, if you haven't checked this out, Democracy Mine, especially if you've taken the first survey, if you're a Canadian, it is actually laugh out loud kind of fun, because they are really taking the piss out of the Canadian survey and the Canadian government survey, and it's a shame, because I think there is a big appetite for this issue, and right now there's a lot of grumbling about not having a meaningful opportunity to participate. Okay, so those are the first two categories. The third category that I want to draw your attention to is to collaborate. And collaborate is, as it comes to mind, is getting lots of people together to work together on an issue and figuring out, what are the issues and what are our priorities, and moving possibly through the steps of dialogue and deliberation, depending on the opportunity you have. And so here's a tool from New Zealand, or a website from New Zealand. Someone's submitted, and actually I've been keeping an eye on this one, where the question was, how can we make Wellington better? The City Council was drafting a long-term plan for the next 10 years for the city. And you could see here that that informing tool I talked about, that video right there as you land. And then there is some information and opportunities to get input. Oh, sorry, I guess I didn't have the right slide there, but people were able to identify in different categories of growth and focus what ideas they had, and then they had a second layer after they'd gotten the ideas, and they gave proposals, and people were able to comment on those proposals, and there was a little bit of responding to one another. So it was a little bit of collaborate in terms of there was the Wellington City Council was collaborating with others, with respondents about what are the things we should be thinking about, not as much collaborating between participants. Here's another example, also from the Southern Hemisphere. The Australia Post had a national conversation about its service, and this used the engagement platform by Bang the Table, and they're based in Australia, but they're all around the world now, and they provide a suite of engagement services, which could be really useful if you want to be able to do a variety of different kinds of engagement over time. And So this is things like it provides discussion forums, and they provide moderators if you choose to have them do the moderation, so you don't have to have a semi-full-time person during your discussion times. There's polling, they have a storytelling element, they've got videos you can see, document area, a bunch of different stuff. I'm sure there's people on the call here who have used Bang the Table or maybe using it right now. But if you wanted to see the end of a 2-year consultation, you can check this one out. And then a third example of collaboration, this is happening in Seattle, Washington, the United States. They're using a tool called Consider It. So it's consider.it. And so you can see here the mayor is having a conversation about how do we have equitable outreach and engagement in the city, and so a little bit of what they're up to, and then here's a screenshot of how to participate. So they have a variety of values, and I'm not sure how they identify these values. Maybe they did some in-person workshops that then got brought here. And so the question on this section is, what do you value engaging with the city about issues in your community, such as at public meetings? And so then when you click here, I value learning more about the issues, what you would see is some pros and cons that the participants have developed themselves. And participants can choose others' pros or cons that they that have been submitted, or add their own, and then put themselves, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen, from agree to disagree. And so you see, this is really heavily weighted to the agree side. What I might say controversial, so it's easy to agree with. Maybe it's also reflective of who's participating. Maybe they need to be reaching out to a broader community so that they do get some more diversity of opinion. But it's a very interesting tool to look at. And so if you can check out the Seattle use of Consider It, or just go to the Consider It website. The fourth category is citizen reporting and citizen science. And this focuses on two different categories of engagement. So the first one is these mobile, although there's also desktop versions, applications for citizens in a municipality to be able to identify trash in the street, graffiti, potholes, broken street lights, all sorts of things that would normally be called into the city. And in many of the municipalities, so then because it's on a mobile device, they can identify exactly the geographic location, which you see there in the middle screen. And then on the left-hand screen, it'll allow you to be able to navigate the platform. And here's just a version here. We're looking here at the specific tool we're looking at is See, Click, Fix. But there are tons of tools out there that allow citizens to engage with the municipality, to be able to source the information about what's happening in the community. And so it's not just the municipality that's responsible for keeping an eye on icy conditions or a pothole. And in some of the tools, citizens are able to rank the issues, so they can the city can get feedback on which ones seem most important to the active users. And also it allows the municipality to give status updates, so they don't have to have people keeping to call to say, oh, is my issue being dealt with? It's in progress or it's completed, and that is a useful way of providing feedback, closing the loop on these small issues. The other aspect of citizen sourcing is citizen science. And so here's just one example that's out there. It's an app for recording lake and water observations. So they have over 600 people that are using this application to facilitate the collection and sharing of lake and water related information around the world. And you can see here the number of people participating. So it's very much focused in the area in which it was initiated, which is the Great Lakes region, primarily in the United States. That's the map at the bottom of the screen I'm looking at. But mostly what's important here to consider is that there are people out there in the community who care a lot about the issues that you're working on. And are there opportunities for them to help provide information, to create a database of understanding the situation? And can you involve them in it? And sometimes this is active, like an app, and sometimes it's passive. And there's an example of a asthma inhaler where when you use the inhaler, when the person who has the inhaler uses the inhaler, it records the air quality and location and time around the unit as the inhaler is used. And then that database can then be an incredible record of air quality over time in different places, which will then be able to help the decision makers determine what issues need to get focused on in what areas in terms of water quality. So it is a bit of a challenge, I think, for us to be able to think, okay, what could I involve people in helping me to gather data about, but a wonderful challenge and a way to engage people who are committed to your issues. Oh, and here's a screenshot of what that app looks like. So on the left-hand side is the landing page, and so you can click on, maybe you want to talk about measurements or aquatic vegetation, and in the middle is being able to talk about some of the measurements you're making, and on the right-hand side, some bit about where you're located. So that's just one example. And then the last one I'm going to identify here is ongoing citizen panels and local community online groups. And this is things like in Talk Vancouver in Canada uses Vision Critical, but I know there's a number of other tools out there for citizen panels. And what this does is allows a municipality or an organization to have a group of people they can come back to in an ongoing way, and to say, hey, I know you have a dog because when you signed up you said I have a dog, or I care about dog issues, and we're going to be talking about dog policy in the municipality, so I can reach out to you. Or it says, I know that you live in this kind of location and we're going to be talking about a zoning issue and I want to reach out to you. And so you don't have to reconnect with people every time you start a project. Now, this is highly beneficial for a municipality or other organization because you've got a group of people that you can work with and come back to over time, and you don't have to ask the same basic demographic questions or other kinds of initiative questions. Plus, it allows people from other projects to say, oh yeah, we're going to be talking about dog parks in this new municipality or this new project coming up. Can I take a look at the input you got around dog parks by people who live in this region? And you can cross-tabulate the data in useful ways for the municipality, and citizens can say, yes, I want to get involved. But there's a downside that not everybody wants to join a closed community and to be a part of a government panel, so you can't just rely on those kinds of tools. And then there are these opportunities for citizens to stay connected with each other, and Stephen Clift with edemocracy.org has a wonderful example in the Twin Cities area where he has lots of people engaged who are participating on an ongoing basis, either via email, or you can participate via Facebook. It has a Facebook connection. And it's a chance for citizens to talk to each other about the issues they care about. And so both of these are examples of ongoing relationship, either community or community decision maker. So I'm just going to pause to see if there are any questions that have come in before I move on to something else.
There's a couple of things, but I think we're going to wait till the end because they're just general comments. Oh, hang on, there was one question regarding e-democracy. So apparently Anne is on the board. Our forums are around the country and several elsewhere in the world. So apparently it's certainly branching out beyond the one you just indicated.
Oh,
thanks,
yes.
Anne.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's correct. And this is just one of the most robust examples. And it really shows how being connected with people over time builds commitment, because it's been the longest running one, but it is it's available for anybody to use all over the place. I know that, for example, after the earthquake in New Zealand, Christchurch created their own forum to deal with the aftermath of the crisis, and it was very useful for that time. So thanks, Anne. Okay, so I didn't go through all the tools, but instead you have a sense of the categories there, and I should say that embedded in that is all sites, all ways, all different types of kinds of engagement. One of the trends I've noticed recently is that mapping is becoming ever more popular, that there are more and more tools for participants to click on a map and annotate that map with something they love about the community or a great idea for development, and that is an interesting way to explore geographical issues. So,
Susanna?
yes.
Sorry, Susanna. Brock was just wondering if you have any suggestions for free or low-cost online mapping tools.
Oh, I have a bunch of different tools, but I think probably the best thing to do, I haven't used one recently myself, so I don't know what are the best tools right now, but the best thing to do would be to look at the end of the slide at those 4 resources and to do some exploring. So sorry, the answer is I don't have a specific recommendation. I've most recently used Urban Interactive, but it's not free. So of course, Google Maps is free, and you can do annotations that way, but it may not be serving your purposes, Brock. Okay, so then thinking strategically about what tool to choose, and there are a variety of ways of approaching it. You can approach it by goal, and this is an old infographic, but I think is an interesting way of just laying out, thinking about it by goal. So on the left-hand side, Kettering has identified the goal of naming problems, framing issues, making decisions deliberately, identifying, committing civic resources, organizing civic actions, learning together. And so this is another iteration of the objectives I shared when we first started. And then you can see how then they would follow, okay, if we're naming problems, that maybe we're going to do a blog. This is a bit old, so I think the tools would be slightly different. Or that if you were going to be making decisions deliberately, which is the third one down, you might do budgeting tools, you might do a discussion forum, follow down, you might do a chat, or you might do texting. So what I'm sharing here is less the tools on the right and more thinking about choosing it by goal. Or you might choose it by participant type. So Kahoots is an online engagement tool provider, and what they've done is they've taken the very common stakeholder influence, stakeholder interest matrix and created a map here of the types of tools that might be responsible for different groups. So for the low influence, low interest, you're really informing them, so you do that through video, public web pages, tweets, Facebook, information updates, RSS feeds. Whereas for those that are high influence and high interest, you might, top right-hand corner, be looking at document co-authoring, task assignment, team diaries, team management. Or for those that are high influence and low interest, top left, maybe you've got a document review, links to articles, project blogs, targeted alerts, and then finally, the bottom right-hand corner, low influence, high interest. Maybe it's discussion forum, formal consultations, ideation. Excuse me. Again, not so much about the exact tools, although these are useful, but more about thinking about, okay, who are we involving? Maybe you'll choose your tools by thinking about the level of public impact. And the Communities Collaborating Institute took the IAP2 spectrum, and then they just had a little bit of a brainstorm about the kinds of tools that might be appropriate as you go along the level of public impact. And so you can see inform, to consult, to involve, to collaborate, to empower, and the kinds of tools you might consider. And then the last way to think about it is, this is Matt Leininger's, oh, and I think I didn't put the source on here. This is Matt Leininger's IBM report called Using Online Tools to Engage and Be Engaged by the Public. So Matt Leininger, I think it's 2011 IBM report. And so he thought about, first, you can think about the scenario. So maybe you're trying to create consensus, and then, which then guides the tools and tactics you might choose. So your scenarios might be gathering opinions, creating consensus, obtaining ideas, making decisions, educating citizens, and then here's 10 tools that he identified, and this was some years ago. So those are all ways to think about how do you choose which tool you're going to be engaging. And then we're getting close to the end of our time, and so I think the last thing, there's sort of 2 last things I want to share is, what do you think, Amelia? Should I keep going or should I stop for questions?
Why don't you keep going? We've got 2 or 3 questions, but I'll answer them as soon as you're finished.
Okay. And I apologize.
Ask them as soon as you're finished.
Thanks. Okay. And I apologize to those who have to leave on the hour, and feel free to watch the end of it on the recording that gets sent out. So a lot of people who filled out the pre-survey talked about social media. You know, how do I do social media in a way that actually gets people engaged? Because mostly what we're doing, and I say we because it's a common issue, is using it like a regular communication tool and just pushing information out, and people really aren't interacting. And so first of all, why interaction is so important. I'm just going to focus on Facebook for a minute, but all social media sites have their own algorithm. Facebook prioritizes stories that you will like, as in like quote-unquote like, pressing the button to say, I like this, comment on, share, click, and spend time reading. Stories you will interact with. And they prioritize posts from friends and family, what they know about you that you find interesting and informative, and what entertains you, which basically means that not posts from pages. And so if you want your page, and it's a bit of a bait and switch that Facebook has done. For a long time it said, bring your online audiences into Facebook. It's a great way to connect with people. And people did. They invested a lot of time and money in connecting with people on Facebook. And then a couple years ago they said, we're no longer going to be prioritizing posts from pages. And a page is like a government organization or a project or a nonprofit organization. So if you want your post to be seen, you may have to pay to boost that post to target audiences, or you need to have your followers interact with the post and share it and connect with it in a way that they spread the word for you. So how does Facebook choose what to show in the newsfeed? And what I'm going to it looks a bit complicated when you first look at it, but it's not. So that what shows up in the newsfeed, which is when you arrive to Facebook, that stream of posts that comes in front of you, is who's the creator? Am I as a user interested in that person, that organization? What kind of post, how well has that post done with other people? Did other people engage with it? Because if not, they're unlikely to show it to me. The type of post, is it a status update, a photo, a link, and how do I interact with that? You can't really control that very much. And then how new is the post? And I think the recency piece has kind of fallen off a little bit, but that still plays a role. But if, for example, this isn't an organizational example, but if I'm off Facebook for, say, a week and I come back online, my friend may have had a baby 7 days ago. I missed the post. It's not recent, but they're going to show it to me anyway because they know that friends and family, it's important to me. I interact with that kind of post. So this is the formula you need to consider, and Facebook's constantly changing its algorithm, but this is from September, so it's pretty recent. So you need to think about, how do you engage with people? Is it a type of post that people engage with? A visual post is a good example. Are other people engaging with it? And so here's a kind of a diagram of that. You can see who posted it, when it was posted, the type of content, it's an image of a baby, and interactions with the post, other people have engaged with it. So the two top ways to increase your content's impact are, first of all, on the left, monitoring your metrics for what types of posts your audience is engaging the most with, and keep doing those. And when you have a post that does well, post it again in a few days. Maybe you'll get a different group this time. And spend a bit of money to promote those high-performing posts to target audiences. So that's one piece, is about learning and measuring. And the second piece is about investing in good visuals. Have a call to action in the text or the image, so that it is not just here's information, but here's what I'd like you to do with that information. I'd like you to go and fill out the survey, or I'd like you to share this tweet. And it should be understandable even if it's viewed out of context. And here's an example of using images in a way that's meaningful for people. This is the Transit Security Administration in the United States. Top airports by spring break volume. So a nice kind of infographic-y thing, meaningful information to people, which is something you want to try to if it's meaningful or inspirational, are two great ways to make content that people will interact with. And here they have a hashtag on the right-hand side, spring break, so they're connecting with a wide variety of audiences. The information is actually useful. People will have a relationship with those airports. I mean, they're the top airports. There's a lot of people going through there. And there's a chance for people to share it with their friends who they're going on spring break with. A lot of great things about this post. And you can see here it had, at the time I captured it, a week after it was posted, 2,000 likes and almost 300 comments. This is on Instagram. So your next step for better social media content is steal from other people, or learn. Learn what other people are doing, right? So it's not, you don't need to figure it out on your own. There's so many resources out there. And even if they're not specifically about public engagement, look what the best practices are in nonprofit engagement or even business engagement. So you can see here I did a social media post and content ideas search, and there's a bunch of different things you could look for. Try out what other people are finding works. You don't need to figure it out on your own. And then I'm just going to do one last, the screen might look funny for a second. I'm just going to do one last piece here, which is around designing engagement for different audiences. And make sure you're still seeing the screen. Nope. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say here is about designing engagement for different audiences. And this is useful for all kinds of engagement. So what I think about is that your participants kind of fit into a pyramid. That at the bottom are observers. And I think we can sometimes give those folks a bad name in the online world. We call them lurkers. But these are participants. Let us not forget this. I did a Facebook engagement project with the City of Vancouver about their long-range transportation plan. And many people joined, but only some participated. But when I did the final survey about their experience, 30% of respondents never posted once in the Facebook dialogue. And that says and I was amazed about that. They were committed enough to the process that they were responding to the survey, but never participated. And so it's just a little anecdote to underline the importance of remembering those folks that they're talking to their neighbors or they're coming back to pay attention. So how do we engage those? And then the most people you'll engage is above them, which is the shallow engagement. Those are people that are going to click on a post or fill out a 2-question survey, or they're going to walk by your open house or pop in for a minute or stop at the information booth. They're going to, they're interested, but they're busy and they're not really connected. Some participants will give you medium time and energy. They'll come back, they'll fill out a longer survey, they'll do the whole online budgeting exercise, they'll comment on other people's ideas in an idea ranking. They may even vote on them to rank them as well. And then at the top are your few participants who are going to give you deep participation. And those are the people who are coming to the 3-hour workshop that are adding content in your online spaces where there's opportunities to add new ideas. They're cultivating or they're quite active in your social media spaces. And I think our challenge, I think we're very good at the top of the pyramid and very good at the bottom. Our challenge is to get better at the middle, creating meaningful opportunities for people who care and who are interested but are just kind of busy. And this pyramid maps onto an engagement pyramid. And this is the last concept I want to leave you with, is to actually think through what are the things you're hoping people will do at each level of engagement and creating opportunities for them. So here's an example. At the bottom of observing, they're aware and they're learning about the project, maybe directly from me or maybe through others. Number 2, they're subscribing to my newsletter, they're following my social media posts, they've said, yes, we can have a relationship. The 3rd level would be endorsing. There's a shallow engagement there. They respond to your survey, they share some posts, they rank others' contributions. At the 4th level, they're contributing. They're contributing their considered opinions. They're attending an event, they're adding new content, they're commenting in a meaningful way. The 5th level, there's ongoing committed involvement. They're a leading contributor online. They attend workshops. They're taking messages across channels from the newsletter to their own Twitter feed, for example. And then at the top, they have a role with essential aspects of your P2 project. They're participating in an advisor group, they're an online influencer, they're a community moderator, maybe they're even helping with the leadership outreach. So actually, I have a poll here, Drew, about the engagement pyramid. And the question is, do you consider how people move up the engagement pyramid for your P2 projects? And maybe you hadn't thought about it before. No, it doesn't work in my context. Yes, we sometimes use this model, or yes, we regularly use this model. Thinking about, so if I'm clear on what are the various roles I'd like people to play, how do I get them to go from subscribing to being an active contributor? That is the kind of question I'm asking.
Thanks, Susanna. So that poll is certainly open right now, and we're going to close it now. Drew, if you want to close it up, and we'll see what people have to say. So 56% hadn't thought about it before. 6% it doesn't work in my context. 28%, yes, sometimes we use this model. And 11%, yes, we regularly use this model.
That's great. For those that said sometimes or regularly, if you would be willing to put into the questions area an example of how you use it or what you've learned as you use that model, then maybe as we go through the questions, Amelia can share that with us. So while we transition to questions, here's the IEP2 Skills Symposium that Amelia was talking about. It's at the end of February, beginning of March in San Diego. You can look that up. And of course, anybody can come. It's just in the U.S. And I'm doing one on social media and public participation, and also one on evaluating and measuring public participation. And I didn't get a chance to share those slides. I always end up putting on more content than I probably should, but I'll include those slides in the slide deck about how to evaluate and measure online public engagement. Or folks want to stick around after we get some questions, I could show them at that time. And then here's those tool directories. So I'll leave those up for folks who just want to capture that now. And Amelia, over to you.
Thanks very much, Susanna. Now, apparently it's taking a little bit of time to show your screen, so we ask for a little bit of patience, but hopefully it'll be up soon.
That's my fault. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. I am going to ask some of the questions, but perhaps one comment right off the bat, and we got that from one of your participants. They also talked about the importance of humor with engaging. They appreciated both your comic strip and your earlier poll questions, so thank you for that. But from Jennifer, Jennifer's question is, in terms of showing that high-level real-time analysis of results to participants, for examples in surveys, would showing these results to participants risk influencing response and skewing the overall results?
So that's a great question. And this is a question that's relevant also for when we do mobile polling at an event. I always like to hide the responses so that we don't do that. And so the screenshot you saw was after the poll had closed, and so we saw the final results. So that was for the Rally Bright project. Excuse me. But I don't know, I didn't see it, but my guess is that while it was open, first you would have had to choose your own response, and then you would see the results. So that's something important. If you're going to use cell phone voting, what I actually do, or any kinds of keypad voting at an event, the first question I ask is always a kind of a throwaway question, just a funny kind of question, because half the people aren't really paying attention or don't, whatever, I'm not going to, this gimmick, I'm not going to participate. But then you can see the results coming up on screen and they're like, oh no, I got to participate. So that one I do keep open so that people can see the results sort of pouring in and it feels interactive. But after that, it is important to hide the results until you show it, just like Amelia did here on the webinar. And there's a wonderful book by David Campt called Reading the Room for Real about how to use voting technology in in-person events, and that's a great resource.
Thanks very much. So from Belinda, for youth engagement, can you use more youth-friendly social media platforms like Snapchat or Instagram for engagement? And if yes, how?
Those are great questions. And so it comes back to that first, or sort of that second slide about know your audience. So very early on in any engagement project, one of the core principles of IEP2 is to engage people, give people a chance to tell you how they want to be engaged. And so if you know that you're going to be doing youth engagement, is to invite some youth in or take them out for coffee or go to the high school and hang out during, civics and get some input from them about what tools they're using. The youth social media tools are highly dependent on the specific group. One high school might be using one tool, and another high school is using a different tool. Plus, it changes all the time. They're no longer on Facebook. Even Snapchat is starting to become less popular. Vine was really popular for a while, but that stopped. So it's really about getting clear on what tools are they using and how to, and then listening to how they use the tool for a while before jumping in, so that we are reflecting the norms of any environment and not coming in and, acting like a robot when it's really meant to be a different kind of engagement or whatever it is. So those asking audiences and then listening to how people use the tool for social media before jumping in.
Thanks very much. So we still have a few more questions that we're going to go through, but we are coming close to having to wrap this up. So my apologies if I haven't included your question. But Christine is asking, do you have any examples of low-cost or even free programs we could use to create a storytelling approach for decision-making that allows citizens to rank priorities and or divide money? So, for example, participatory budgeting.
Mm-hmm. So we'd probably be useful to have a conversation, understand the role of the storytelling and then the ranking priorities. I think that there are quite a number of reasonably priced tools out there. It depends on what your budget is. So free or low cost, I'll say something about free tools, that there are lots of tools out there that are technically free, but let us always remember that there is a very real cost in terms of amount of staff time it takes to get it going and any kind of customization that's required. So free is always with a grain of salt. And so sometimes it can be useful to spend $5,000 on getting a service provider that lowers the amount of initial startup time your staff will have to spend. So I think about something like Open North is a reasonable price for participatory, online budgeting. MetroQuest has a lot of interactive mechanisms that include priority ranking and budget allocation. Other people who are on the call, if you have tools that you really like for those, please put them into the questions area. There are DLib out of the UK has a budgeting tool. I know that Bang the Table has a budgeting tool, and I don't know if they sell it separate from the whole suite. So there's a lot of tools out there, and they're fairly reasonable. Again, the real cost would be in spending the time so that the choices are meaningful and that you have a careful balance of providing enough information so people aren't just shooting off the hip, but also not so much information that feel like they're wading through the financial details.
So thank you very much, Susanna. I think we could probably keep going on this for a long while, but we are going to have to wrap it up. So just to remind everyone, we will be sending the recording of today's webinar out to them, and we'll also be sending any materials that Susanna provides to us. So I would like to sincerely thank Susanna for running today's learning webinar. As always, it's a real pleasure, and I'm hoping that many of you will perhaps join me down in San Diego, because I know I'm signed up for your two-day course and looking forward to learning a lot more, and hopefully others will do the same. So I want to say a very big thank you to Susanna, and I want to remind about our January webinar.
Yes. Jump in. I just want to say that if you had a question that you really hope would get answered and you didn't get a chance, email me. I'm happy to answer questions by email. Just quick ones like the ones that were suggested, or if you want to be in touch to talk more about issues, I'm happy to. So I think my email address anyway is my name, Susanna at SusannaHawesLyons.com. And yeah, if you didn't get your question answered and want it to be answered, just email me.
Okay, brilliant. And we will be sending out all of your information within the next 24 hours, Susanna, so hopefully they can follow up with that as well. But I haven't quite let you off the hook yet. But I want to introduce our January webinar. And coming up next month, we're going to be looking at the concept that's been gaining traction around the world, which is participatory budgeting. Sherry Davis of the Participatory Budgeting Project in the U.S. will join us to tell us more about how it works and some of the success stories. And Luc Richal from the city of Dieppe, New Brunswick, will tell us how his city put the plan into action. And just to let everyone know, that's going to be Tuesday, January the 10th at the usual time of 2 p.m. Eastern or 11 o'clock Pacific. So Susanna, again, thank you so very much for today. We really appreciate it. And certainly on behalf of IAP2 Canada, IAP2 USA, and IAP2 Australasia, thanks to Susanna, and thank you to everyone that's participated in today's call. This is our last webinar year. So we're wishing everyone a great happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2017. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and enjoy your holidays if you've got them coming. Take care. Bye-bye.